given our panelists a chance to settle in. Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to say welcome to one and all coming out to the town hall meeting that is brought to you by SEDI, the St.Croix Economic Development Initiative, in collaboration with the St. Croix Chamber of Commerce and UBI. First and foremost, we really are appreciative to see the level of interest in the community about this sensitive issue. And so we're going to jump right in to the discussion. However, there is a couple of housekeeping items that I would just like to bring to your attention. First and foremost is bathrooms. The bathrooms that are out in the front of the hall this way are locked, so if anyone needing to use the bathroom, there are bathrooms that are located in the agriculture extension station right to the back of us this evening, and I hope that we can maintain order and respect for one another, and you know, have that level of appreciation for both sides of the argument. The way how we're going to run this discussion this evening is that we will, at this point, have the panelists introduce themselves, and then from there we will ask questions and then do a round of questioning from the audience. We'll ask the panelists questions first, and then after they answer, we give the audience a chance to do a round of questioning, and then we move on to the next question. With no further ado, first, let me just jump back. I want to also, recognize my colleague working the area with me tonight, Mr. Lorenzo Frederick Hubert of Island Insurance and Laundry Time, and check him out when you get an opportunity to support our local businesses. And with that, I am going to call Mr. Anthony Weeks. Before we do that, let me just plug, in terms of questioning from the audience, we are going to allow each person, with respect to time, we're going to allow each person 30 seconds to ask your question to whoever you want indicated to on the panel, or whichever panelist would like to take that question. And with that also, we are going to allow the panelists 30 seconds to also respond to the question. And we're doing it this way so that we can get as many questions and move through the entire process, questioning process as we go forward. All right? I'm so busy talking. My name this evening, your moderator is Alexis George. I have been around this community for quite some time, and yeah, that's who I am. Thanks. I was just told that the bathrooms in the front are open now. So with no further ado, I would like to call up Anthony Weeks for the opening remarks.
Folks, I just want to say that it's good to see the community come out for an issue such as one that we are contemplating as to what we want to go from here. And it should be that way, because that's the way, in a free world, in a democratic society, that we are given that privilege to be able to voice our opinion, stand on our issues, stand by our convictions, and firmly say how we feel about a particular issue. My name is Anthony Waits. I am the principal founder of the 2007 St.Croix Economic Summit. That was approximately 5 years ago. Things were very different back then. At that point, when we met, it was just for the purpose of addressing stagnation, economic stagnation in St. Croix. Even though we had a number of industries in place, one of the things we noticed were key areas were not growing. I mean, I don't believe we built a hotel in at least 30 years, and we're supposed to be in that business. Can you hear me? I guess someone is saying that you can't hear me. I'm sorry. And at that point, when we had the summit in 2007, 5 years ago, it was a collaboration between the public and private sector. We had over 300 people attended this summit, and we met for 2 days, rolled up a sleeve, saw some problems. HOVENSA closure was not on the radar. The Great Recession was not on the radar. Today is a different story. And so we as a community are going to tackle a very important issue, and this evening I'm hoping that this could be an education for all of us, because education is power, and we can make an informed decision based on the information that we have available to us. Let me just remind you, the panelists here, the Congresswoman, Delegate to Congress, Donna Christensen, will be with us shortly. She's going to participate on that screen that you see over there. She'll be live from Washington, D.C. on the Capitol, and you'll be able to engage her like you are able to engage the good folks here on the table this evening. So you'll have an opportunity, because you'll get to hear from her on a federal level as well. So we'll look forward to that as well. If you are interested in, if you know folks who are unable to make this, you can let folks know they can watch the live town hall now, anywhere in the world. You can tell them to go to www.sedivision.com. That's SEDIVISON.com. www.watchnews.tv. And the third is www.theeconomy, that's THE-economy, theeconomy.tv. So we encourage you to let your family and friends and colleagues know that they can watch the town hall meeting live this evening. I think it's important that I would like to, I'm a stickler for sort of laying a foundation, if you will, for the conversation. And the conversation is really for the purpose of allowing ourselves to be objective as we receive the information and as we engage each other. As mentioned, SEDI, as an economic policy think tank, has been mandated and empowered as a private sector advocate for a more robust private sector economy for St. Croix and the greater USVI, which encompasses a local economic recovery and envision long-term global economic competitive plan. Long-term economic growth and prosperity depends on some basic inputs: labor, capital, technology, combined with civil society that promotes abundant opportunities and the rule of law. The production function is a generic term economists use to describe the activities that transform these inputs into goods and services that we consume every day. Energy plays a vital role in helping economies grow and create new opportunities, and the U.S. Virgin Islands have been in the oil business since September 1st, 1965. At the 50-year mark, it will be a major milestone for the U.S. Virgin Islands being in the oil and energy business and a global player. For an economy to grow, it needs energy. To sustain and enhance economic progress around the world, we must continue to improve the value created through the use of energy sources, address related environmental challenges, and safely expand the world's commercially viable energy supply through technological advancements. Overall, global energy demand will grow 35%, even with significant efficiency gains as the world population expands from 7 billion people today to nearly 9 billion people by 2040, led by the growth in Africa and India. With this growth comes a greater demand for electricity. Today and over the next few decades, electricity generation represents the largest driver of demand for energy. Through 2040, it will account for more than half of the increase in global energy demand. Oil will remain the number one form of energy, while natural gas will overtake coal for the number 2 spot. Use of nuclear and renewable energy will grow, while demand for coal peaks, then begins a gradual decline. Turning crude oil into usable products. Crude oil does a lot more than simply provide fuel for our cars, our trucks, keep our homes and businesses comfortable, and power our industries. It is also a key ingredient in making thousands of products that improve our lives, from aspirin and toothpaste to perfumes, inks, plus the packaging for many of these products. Now, earlier you heard that we have partnered with the University of Virgin Islands, and of course, one of the panel this evening is represented by the University of Virgin Islands. We have the Professor of Process Technology. We have Eric Douglas. Thank you, Eric, for being here. Now, it's important to, as we look at the different issues, workforce development is key. And so, Eric is going to speak a little bit about that. The University of the Virgin Islands, in collaboration with HOVENSA, began offering an Associate of Applied Science degree in Process Technology on St. Croix campus during the fall semester of 2002. The end of the spring semester of 2012 will be the culmination of the 10th academic year existence of this program and result in the graduation of approximately 100 process technicians. The student population at UVI has a very low male representation. According to Noel Levitt's UVI student satisfaction survey conducted in 2008, 76% of the student population comprised of females, 24% comprised of males. The Process Technology program has attracted a significant number of male students to St. Croix, to the St. Croix campus in particular. Male representation in this program has consistently been at around 70%. The UVI Process Technology program is an integral part of a national effort and strategy to address the need to produce process technicians for process industries throughout the nation. According to the American Chemical Society, there are approximately 700,000 processing technicians in the United States, and 80% of them are baby boomers who will retire in the next 10 to 15 years. UVI is an education partner with the Center for the Advancement in Process Technology, the acronym called CAP. CAP was established in 2002 as a national center of excellence to assist in addressing this national need. CAP is based at the College of the Mainland, Texas City, Texas, and its primary mission is to lead the education industry and government policymakers in developing a nationwide skilled process technology workforce. Its objective is to maintain the United States' competitive edge in chemical process industry in the global economy. Transportation and the economy. Key. When we think of how do we grow our economy, how do we diversify our economy, transportation is going to play a key role in that. The importance of transportation, like many economic activities that are intensive in infrastructures, the transportation sector is an important component of the economy impacting on development and the welfare of populations. When transport systems are efficient, they provide economic and social opportunities and benefits that result in positive multipliers effects such as better accessibility to markets, employment, and additional investment. When transport systems are deficient in terms of capacity or reliability, they can have an economic cost such as reduced or missed opportunities. Efficient transportation reduces costs, while inefficient transportation increases costs. The impact of transportation are not always intended and can have unforeseen or unintended consequences such as congestion. Transportation also carries an important social and environmental load which cannot be neglected. The added value and employment effect of transportation services usually extend beyond employment and added value generated by that activity. Indirect effects of selling. For instance, transportation companies purchase a part of their inputs from local suppliers. This is very important. The production of these inputs generates additional value added and employment in the local economy. The suppliers in turn purchase goods and services from the other local firms. They are further grounds of local respending, which generates additional value added and employment. Similarly, and the reason this is important, you will learn tonight, we've gone from where we used to be an agrarian society, we made a decision to go into the industrial area, but for some strange reason, we went from where we were producing to now we're not producing anything. We're not producing literally anything. Because of expanding economies and international trade, transportation-related energy demand will increase by more than 40% from 2010 to 2040. Most of this demand is driven by commercial sources such as trucks, planes, ships, and trains. Now, if you look at the presentation slide on that television screen, you will see visual images of the refinery, you'll see images of the globe, and that's important because St.Croix is in an extremely strategic position as it relates not only to energy, technology, but transportation. We right now, St.Croix, nobody knows this, St.Croix is playing a key role as it relates to the Panama Canal. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The Panama Canal has had an enormous impact on commerce and trade. It allows ships to avoid having to sail around the tip of South America, to make it from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean and vice versa. Ships were able to carry more tonnage and the effects on the economy of the United States was drastic. The Panama Canal allows ships that had previously taken 60 days to make the trip from New York to San Francisco to do it in 30 days. The canal opened on August 15, 1914. The total length of the Panama Canal is 47.9 million. It's 47.9 miles. What used to be 13,000 miles trip ship from New York to the West Coast was whittled down to 5,000 miles. Annual traffic has risen from about 1,000 ships when the canal opened in 1914 to 14,702 vessels in 2008. And the latter measured a total of 309.6 million Panama Canal Universal Measuring System tons. By 2008, more than 815,000 vessels had passed through the canal, many of them much larger than the original plan could have envisioned. Let me say that in closing, one of the things that the Panama Canal did when they realized that they outgrew the canal, they came up with an enlargement scheme to allow for a greater number of transit and ability to 264.007 miles. Economic growth, as measured by the rate at which a country per capita GDP rises, is directly related to the pace of technological change. The future forecast of oil is on the rise, considering most oil supply companies have oil trading brokerage units managing risk, hedging the market, whether managing short or long-term risk. In the United States, most major power utilities also have energy trading units. The U.S. Virgin Islands, I believe, makes a very compelling case to hedge our market position and should be a strategic element of the New Deal. We possess the technological infrastructure, the world's second largest here on St. Croix, for that matter, to set up a future commodities market in energy. I close by saying every major economic cycle requires both a renewal and restructuring of the economy. We must see beyond the problems we are confronted with today. Every crisis is an opportunity for change. Every problem begs for a solution. Right before our very eyes, we are witnessing the demise of the St. Croix economy. We were once producers of the dairy industry, oil and aluminum. We are now down to just one industry, and that's producing rum. Economic growth is the increase in the amount of the goods and services produced by an economy over time. If 99% of what we are consuming is coming from the outside, which we report, and the hard-earned income we make is spent on these goods and services, 99% of our dollars is being exported elsewhere, leaving the territory, producing only 1% of what we consume. We're dealing with a major economic leakage, flight of precious local dollars, lack of money circulation. And if we are not strategic about how we manage this dilemma and economic predicament we are in, there is no telling what will be the economic future of St. Croix in the 21st century. Every community wants to grow its local economy and achieve greater prosperity. Every community desires to be a local location where people want to live, engage in meaningful work, and pursue their passion. In short, every community wants to be a vibrant, safe, and livable place. How we handle this opportunity in this moment in time, only history will tell. I want to thank you for coming out this evening. I want to call back the moderator, Alexis and Lorenzo, to continue the process and basically have the evening down. Yeah.
All right. All right, good evening again, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear us?
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear us?
Yes, I could hear that pretty clearly.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, Ellie. Welcome to the town hall.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
All right, as we move forward, we're going to start the actual discussion tonight. And first and foremost, we want to first address the panel, and we would like for you guys to give a brief introduction of yourself, your respective organization, and in part with that, I would like for you also to give your opinion briefly in terms of the economic impact, climate and environmental fallout for HOVENSA pre-closure, and also the impact economically and also benefits post-HOVENSA. And so we can start going down the line. You guys would need for me to repeat that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Give a brief introduction of yourself and a respective organization. Of course, we know who you are, the delegate, and of course, the Commissioner Brian also. But with that, we'd also like for you guys to give your opinion and a brief comparison of the economic climate and the environmental impact both prior to the HOVENSA closure and after the HOVENSA closure. So I want you to give a comparison of the overall climate of the Virgin Islands, pre-HOVENSA closure, post-HOVENSA closure.
Okay, I'll start off. My name is Eric Douglas. I'm a professor of process technology at the University of the Virgin Islands. And as Mr. Weeks briefly mentioned, back in 2002, HOVENSA and the university signed a memorandum of understanding, and we started offering an associate's degree in process technology at UVI to provide technicians or operators basically for the refinery. Prior to this, HOVENSA would just hire people out of high school and train them in the training program that they had at the refinery, and turn them into process operators. In the late 1990s, there was a movement nationwide to raise the bar, the required skill level for process operators. And so instead of companies doing in-house training, they turned that responsibility over to colleges and universities, and that's where that associate's degree in process technology came from. UBI began offering that program in 2002. I have been the director of that program since its inception in 2002. And HOVENSA, being a partner, provided all of the financial support for the program. They provided the salaries for all the instructors and professors. They gave scholarships to the program. They also allowed us access to their training school and their training facilities on the refinery site. And so that was a very good thing, because as soon as the students graduated from the program in the good days, HOVENSA would hire them right out, basically take all the graduates. Towards the end of 2010, things started getting a little bit more stringent, a little hard, and HOVENSA was not hiring all the graduates we were producing. And then by 2012, HOVENSA decided to shut down the program. Well, they decided they couldn't support it because they were shutting down the refinery. We have not shut down the program. I need to get rid of a misconception in the community that process operators are only hired by oil refineries, that nothing could be further away from the truth. It's actually a good field to study, irrespective. Of course, we would want the refinery to open back up because HOVENSA was a big fish in a small pond. But I want to make it clear to everyone that a process technologist or process operator can get employment in any of a wide range of industrial fields, including rum making. A lot of our graduates have gone to Diageo and Fusion Rum since HOVENSA shut down. WAFA, power plant generation, beverages, you just name it, wastewater treatment plants. I don't know how many of you know that we've got advanced wastewater treatment plants on the island that is owned by the Waste Management Authority and run by a private company called Veolia. They need process operators for that. Okay, so unfortunately what happened when HOVENSA decided to shut down, our enrollment dropped significantly from about 100 students. We're down to about 28 students now. I think we should be doing the opposite, because ask yourself this question. What if, and let's hope that this refinery is sold and reopened, where are they going to get the skilled workers to run that refinery? A lot of the people who are running that refinery have gone on, they've gone off island. Let me tell you, a lot of them didn't have difficulty finding jobs elsewhere. That is a field that actually has an acute shortage of people, because as was mentioned by Mr. Weeks, we're going to need about 700,000 process operators over the next 10 to 15 years, because most of these process operators are baby boomers, people who were born right after the Second World War and who are now retiring en masse. And so where are these skilled workers going to come from? And in fact, the federal government recognizes there's a potential problem with not having enough people going into that field. And so that's why they've been encouraging community colleges and universities throughout the mainland to offer this process technology program. All right, so I'm here to talk about the impact on the educational system, the opportunities that we had that we now don't have, but I don't want people to go with the impression that because the refinery shut down, you should not get in. You should get in now, because what if the refinery opens up 1 year from now, 18 months from now, 24 months from now? If you don't have that degree, they don't hire people right out of high school anymore and train them. You have to have at least, for the most part, an associate's degree in process technology. And I think the community should be aware of that and says, wow, we need to produce these people so that when the refinery opens up, we have people who can come in and take those positions. We don't want to hear that when the refinery, and I'm a positive person, I say when, I'm not saying if. When the refinery reopens up, we don't want to hear all these people bringing in people from outside to take those jobs because we don't have skilled workers to take care of it. All right, and so I'll leave it at that for now, but I am here to talk about the educational impact on the community.
I am Paul Shackroff. I'm Executive Director of St. Croix Environmental Association, and I'm here this evening to address issues with regard to the environmental impact.
Basically for the refinery. Prior to this, HOVENSA would just hire people out of high school and train them in the training program that they had at the refinery, and turn them into process operators. In the late 1990s, there was a movement nationwide to raise the bar, the required skill level for process operators. And so instead of companies doing in-house training, they turned that responsibility over to colleges and universities, and that's where that associate's degree in process technology came from. UVI began offering that program in 2002. I have been the director of that program since its inception in 2002. And HOVENSA, being a partner, provided all of the financial support for the program. They provided the salaries for all the instructors and professors. They gave scholarships to the program. They also allowed us access to their training school and their training facilities on the refinery site. And so that was a very good thing, because as soon as the students graduated from the program in the good days, HOVENSA would hire them right out, basically take all the graduates. Towards the end of 2010, things started getting a little bit more stringent, a little hard, and HOVENSA was not hiring all the graduates we were producing. And then by 2012, HOVENSA decided to shut down the program. Well, they decided they couldn't support it because they were shutting down the refinery. We have not shut down the program. I need to get rid of a misconception in the community that process operators are only hired by oil refineries, that nothing could be further away from the truth. It's actually a good field to study, irrespective. Of course, we would want the refinery to open back up, because HOVENSA was a big fish in a small pond. But I want to make it clear to everyone that a process technologist or process operator can get employment in any of a wide range of industrial fields, including rum making. A lot of our graduates have gone to Diageo and Fusion Rum since HOVENSA shut down. WAFA, power plant generation, beverages, you just name it, wastewater treatment plants. I don't know how many of you know that we've got advanced wastewater treatment plants on the island that is owned by the Waste Management Authority and run by a private company called Veolia. They need process operators for that. Okay, so unfortunately what happened when HOVENSA decided to shut down, our enrollment dropped significantly from about 100 students. We're down to about 28 students now. I think we should be doing the opposite, because ask yourself this question. What if, and let's hope that this refinery is sold and reopened, where are they going to get the skilled workers to run that refinery? A lot of the people who are running that refinery have gone on, they've gone off island. Let me tell you, a lot of them didn't have difficulty finding jobs elsewhere. That is a field that actually has an acute shortage of people, because as was mentioned by Mr. Weeks, we're going to need about 700,000 process operators over the next 10 to 15 years, because most of these process operators are baby boomers, people who were born right after the Second World War and who are now retiring en masse. And so where are these skilled workers going to come from? And in fact, the federal government recognizes there's a potential problem with not having enough people going into that field. And so that's why they've been encouraging community colleges and universities throughout the mainland to offer this process technology program. All right, so I'm here to talk about the impact on the educational system, the opportunities that we had that we now don't have, but I don't want people to go with the impression that because the refinery shut down, you should not get in. You should get in now, because what if the refinery opens up 1 year from now, 18 months from now, 24 months from now? If you don't have that degree, they don't hire people right out of high school anymore and train them. You have to have at least, for the most part, an associate's degree in process technology. And I think the community should be aware of that and says, wow, we need to produce these people so that when the refinery opens up, we have people who can come in and take those positions. We don't want to hear that when the refinery, and I'm a positive person, I say when, I'm not saying if. When that refinery reopens up, we don't want to hear all these people bringing in people from outside to take those jobs because we don't have skilled workers to take care of it. All right, and so I'll leave it at that for now, but I am here to talk about the educational impact on the community.
I am Paul Shackroff. I'm Executive Director of St.Croix Environmental Association, and I'm here this evening to address issues with regard to the environmental impacts of HOVENSA in its current state, in its previous state and in potentially the state of reopening of a refinery. St. Croix Environmental Association position is that a strong, equitably distributed economy supports and provides not only for public health and welfare, but also for environmental protection and conservation. So we can't afford to protect the environment if we don't have money coming into the economy, bottom line. We support the Senate ratification of the Fourth Amendment of the HOVENSA Convention Concession Agreement as a major step forward for the U.S. economy, people, and the environment. Now, I brought a couple of prompts today, and I'll discuss these in greater detail during the question and answer period. But just to give you a quick introduction, let's be honest, HOVENSA is a major polluter, was a major polluter into our environment. This column right here represents the air pollution coming from HOVENSA. When it was operating at full capacity, this is actually the permitted amount. This is what EPA says they're allowed to emit into our environment. And at the time that they determined this, they said this was the amount that was safe for public health. The Air Quality Act is primarily a health quality act. It's an act that protects human health and well-being, more so even than the natural environment. For comparison, this is the amount that was allocated to Renaissance. This is WAPA. So I'll just stack these up a little bit. That's Renaissance, what they're permitted. Now, they haven't actually operated in the last 12 years, but this is what they're allowed to emit and continue to be allowed to emit today. This is what WAPA is allowed to emit into the environment compared to HOVENSA. For comparison, this is Diageo. Okay. All right, so you get an idea of the amount of pollutants that each one of these is permitted to emit into the environment. Now, what this line is here is that if HOVENSA were to reopen, given the $700 million worth of new equipment that they would have to install on their facility, they would drop from here down to here. It's about a 17% reduction in air quality that they would be allowed to emit. So we would get a cleaner HOVENSA than the one that shut down. And that would be a worst case analysis. That would assume that we didn't lose a lot of the old antiquated equipment on the West refinery. If that's the case, we could easily see a reduction here. Also, if a new owner started the operation a year or 2 or 3 years from now, once they got everything up and running, it could be that new environmental law would actually reduce this limit, and their negotiations with the EPA would reduce it. But we know at least that they would not start off any dirtier than this. Now you might say, okay, well that's still not acceptable. This is still a hell of a high column here. To put it in perspective, and I don't have the column next to me, but I will hopefully have that information later in the evening, is that the pollution that we're seeing from automobiles on St. Croix actually exceeds this amount. And the problem with that emission is it's right at ground level. We're smelling it directly in our face instead of up 200 feet in the air on a tower. So to put it in perspective, there are certain things that we find acceptable. We accept a certain amount of pollution as long as it's a level that we can live with, and it's not going to be causing us cancer and asthma and all kinds of other problems. And these are the amounts that EPA has determined to be acceptable. The other point is that HOVENSA was opened in 1965, or at least it was opened in late 1960s. The National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, which is the fundamental environmental law of the United States, was established in 1969, after HOVENSA actually operated. And so the point is that the environmental rules and regulations that a business or an industry has to operate according to today are much more stringent than they were prior to the enactment of that law. So any new industry coming into our community today has to meet higher standards of performance than the one that was begun in 1965. Also, another interesting point, and I know that my time is limited here, but if HOVENSA were to drop this, a new HOVENSA were to drop this amount, it would actually accommodate almost 2 WAPAs. The amount that they are actually losing in terms of their pollution would be losing about two increments of the pollution that's coming from WAPA. But that's not the good news. Last week WAPA signed an agreement to go to propane. When they signed that agreement to go to propane, even though they're allowed to emit this amount of pollution, the actual amount that they're going to emit starting next year under their new propane design is more like this. So WAPA has made a significant reduction in the pollution coming from WAPA, which is all good news for our air quality. And at that point, I'll just leave that until questions. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's a lot of information for 5 minutes, but my name is Albert Bryan. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Department of Labor, of which I'm the commissioner of, also the Economic Development Authority, of which I'm the chairman of the board. When you look at this economic problem, the best way to look at it is by numbers, and I'll take you through the numbers. Number one is it was the largest employer in the Virgin Islands. 3 of the top 10 largest employers in the Virgin Islands shut down when the refinery shut down. The following employers are Kmart, Plaza Extra, the Marriott, and the like. So there's no other employer that employs as much people for as much money with as much skill or has as much of a career or future that leaves behind of it. 17.8%. That's the high that the unemployment rate hit in St. Croix. And that's a conservative estimate when we look at 17.8% because it doesn't take into account people who have stopped looking for work since the beginning of the recession. 70% of the people who take unemployment now exhaust their unemployment. That means when I came in 2007, only 32% of the people who took 26 weeks of unemployment used the full 26 weeks. Now that is more than double to 70%. There were 200 or so jobs listed every week in St. Croix in 2007. Now there are about 50. So that not only are there more people looking for jobs, there are less jobs available. People look at the economy and they said, you know, we're doing all right and we're surviving. The one thing that you have to remember, there are still 600 people working in the refinery as we speak today. 500 contractors and at least 100 or so that work for HOVENSA. So what you're seeing is our economy stop, but it's steadily trickling downward as we experience more and more of the economic downturn. Those people are working, 250 of them now are working without healthcare benefits, which puts an additional strain on our uncompensated care at Juan Louis, which puts additional strains on all of our resources in terms of housing, school, food stamp, you name it. 2,300 people were laid off. And from our count, about 500 to 600 of those people have relocated because when we count, we have about 1,400 to 1,500 people that have actually collected unemployment from our system. When we look at people collecting unemployment from the States, there are not a lot of people who are residing in the States and still collecting unemployment. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have spent $32 million on unemployment for HOVENSA laid off workers. Over $20 million of that will be paid for by VI small businesses in unemployment insurance tax. And that number continues to grow. So when you look at what we're talking about, it's really dramatic. And I put up the graph for you, Lorenzo, if you would just scroll down a little bit on this graph to see that this is what the unemployment spikes looks like collectively as a territory. You could scroll down a little bit more. And this is all not to scale. And this is what the unemployment spike looks like in St. Croix in terms of graphics. Now, the highest number on that scale is about 14. This one is 18. So you scroll down a little bit more, Lorenzo. You can see you can let them see that graph, what has happened in our economy. Now you're seeing it start to downturn now. That's because of the 600 people that are still at work. But as we go further into the off season, we expect to see the unemployment rate rise as well. This is the closest indicator we have as to what's going on currently in the economy. And I just wanted to show you that graphic so you can understand the impact of the refinery. And I could go on and on and on about the other side businesses and side economies that has been affected. If you don't believe it's real, you can go to the grocery store on a Saturday morning after a government payday in St. Croix and it's empty. Go tomorrow, it's the 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Eckert. I am the volunteer president of the board of the all-volunteer St. Croix Chamber of Commerce. I'm tired. I'm tired of people leaving.
It's like a vehicle. So really, to make a comparison of both, you really can't make a comparison because HOVENSA is a stationary source and vehicles are mobile sources. So when they're emitting, they're also, the emissions are dissipated in the environment. So it's a different comparison. So I just need to make that clarification. So they're permitted differently. So it's not really like comparing apples and apples. So we just have to be careful when we put the information out there. In terms, what's the second part of your question, please?
In the 80s, we found out that HOVENSA, below the ground, there were oil that seeped from the tanks. HOVENSA has been cleaning this thing extremely slow throughout the decades. My question to you, how does that affect the cleaning of HOVENSA underneath the compounds that we say is not going into our groundwater? How does the Fourth Amendment Agreement handle or address that issue? Was that calm enough, young lady?
I'm going to say this to you, Cletus, because I know you very well and I respect your intellect. I respect you as a person. We've worked together in the office of Senator John Baptiste, and I think you're doing yourself a disservice by trying to act combative. And so in terms of the response, I can clearly answer the question. As it relates to the groundwater issue, the government of the Virgin Islands, in a previous administration, and we're moving forward with that, we filed a natural resource damages case against HOVENSA, and that case is ongoing. It's ongoing, and it's presently in litigation. And basically, when the amendment was being negotiated, one of the things that HOVENSA wanted to happen is for the environmental issues surrounding the NRD case to be settled or to become a part of that agreement. What we opted to do is keep it separate and apart because we did not want the issues relative to the environment to be diluted in this amendment, because it has nothing to do with the environmental infractions that HOVENSA has caused. And so that natural resource damages case is ongoing, it's in litigation, and the government of the Virgin Islands is moving forward with that case against HOVENSA, separate and apart from the agreement. So in a short answer, nothing in the agreement that has been negotiated with HOVENSA or its parties will impact any of the environmental infractions that HOVENSA is liable for. Nothing in the agreement releases HOVENSA from the environmental liability. Nothing in the agreement will make HOVENSA less responsible for the environmental infractions. The fact that they wanted to have the environmental issues included was for them to sort of dilute their liability issues, and we kept that separate and apart. So there's nothing in this agreement that is going to release HOVENSA from the environmental infractions. Nothing in this agreement prevents any person or groups of persons from bringing any sort of environmental claim against HOVENSA. The environmental regulations are clear. They're cradle to grave. If you cause an environmental issue, you are responsible for cleaning that up. Secondly, let me just answer, Cletus. The cleaning of the oil that has been spilled from tanks and various components at HOVENSA is administered by the Environmental Protection Agency under the RCRA program. RCRA stands for Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. That act is not delegated to states and territories for them to administer. So it is administered directly by the EPA. HOVENSA has a RCRA permit. They're doing groundwater remediation where they're removing petroleum from the groundwater based on their RCRA permit. And that is all managed by the EPA, administered by the EPA. DPNR is...
Are occurring.
In the absence of any new EDA-fueled boom, I believe our economy and our government revenues are spiraling down the drain. We enthusiastically support the governor's position. We need to return the HOVENSA property to a strong role in the VI economy, end of quote. The second individual wrote, quote, HOVENSA closing was a huge blow to the economy as a whole. We have been impacted by the lack of flights or the ease of getting to St. Croix. The trickle-down effect has been a huge hit as well. Less local people at the bar and restaurant because they've moved off island due to no work or the cost of living being higher. Crime is an issue due to the lack of work. The businesses being taxed $25 per employee because we need to help pay the interest back to the feds on the unemployment benefits. It feels like we're being squeezed at every turn. We need to start somewhere to try and rebuild this economy. HOVENSA closing is sad, but even sadder is the fact that our government is fiscally irresponsible and now blaming HOVENSA for our problems. End of quote. Like all residents of St. Croix, we are feeling the pressure of the nonstop increase in our cost of living and the slowdown of our economy. There is no immediate fix to our long-term problems, but we are hopeful that some emphasis will be placed on the diversification of our economy, with particular emphasis on growing our tourism product sustainably and inclusively. We are committed to doing our part by supporting our students through our scholarship program, providing internships, and supporting our nonprofits as they work to provide services to our youth, elders, and underserved. Thank you again for the opportunity to share our thoughts, and I hope that the ensuing discussion is informative and constructive in laying the outline for the future economic growth of St. Croix.
I would just like to inform the audience that Ms. Alicia Barnes is not on the panel. She's just here to answer any questions on the part of the government. So she does not have to make an official statement. Unless there's a question.
Just to clarify, good evening everyone. The speaker is correct. I was not asked to be a member of this panel. I was attending simply to provide information on the environmental realities from the government's perspective and to answer any questions that may be asked relative to the environmental issues relative to the amendment. I am the Commissioner of the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, and I also was part of the negotiating team for the amendment. I'm not here to speak to the specific technical components of the amendment, just to speak to any environmental questions and or concerns that you may have. And thank you very much. So I do not have a prepared statement as I was not officially invited, nor am I late, because I just need to make that clarification. Okay? Thank you and good evening everyone, and thank you for coming on, and I hope we have some very good information exchange, and I think it's commendable that you all are here and that we all are here this evening, and God bless.
Well, good evening again, everyone. I didn't have a prepared statement. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? That's a yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Of course, I'm your delegate to Congress. I've been your delegate for the past 17 years. The questions that we were asked was to talk about the economic and environmental climate pre and post HOVENSA. And I think everybody has really clearly laid out the economic climate before and since, when we had two thriving private schools. Our public schools were supported, our restaurants, our stores were open. I went shopping downtown weeks ago, and it was very disheartening to see many of the stores closed and to realize that people were really not increasing and buying new inventory because there was just the consumer demand was just not there. On the environmental side, I think I didn't have the opportunity to see the charts
that Mrs. Shackroff showed, but I remember that EPA had come down and informed us at one point a few years ago that we had one of the highest greenhouse gases concentration per square mile in the Caribbean and in the United States. We also had one of the highest toxic emissions inventory per capita in the Caribbean and the United States, and that was free while HOVENSA was still open. And of course we often heard of the complaints from the surrounding communities, as well as the downwind communities, of the increasing respiratory diseases, possibly increases in cancer and other health impacts. We did bring the Centers for Disease Control down on several occasions, health screenings to try to develop the kind of data we needed for health assessment. We were never successfully able to gather enough information, but I would say that at the present time, because we had asked the Department of Interior to help us with this, they have funded the University of the Virgin Islands to do some studies around the health impacts of the affected communities, the communities surrounding the industrial area and downwind from the area. And so that is in the early stages. Hopefully we'll get some reports from that in a while. I also wanted to say that in 2011, I was in discussions with both WAPA and HOVENSA, and I included HOVENSA particularly on switching their operated fuel to liquefied natural gas. And we had agreed in the latter part of 2011 to meet again after the holidays to see if bringing it together would increase the market share and efficiency, so that we could more easily convince companies to come to bring that liquefied natural gas to the territory, knowing that we're a small market. And well, we know what happened in January of 2012, but we were in those discussions. So now I think, the environment is obviously much improved, but the economy is stated as everyone else has outlined for us. So where we had a good and terrible impact, now we have a poor economy, but the environment is improved. As we look forward to what might happen with a new refinery, I really think that we ought to consider that past HOVENSA refined a heavy crude, which is really not what's being refined mostly right now. And the likelihood, if a company is to survive, a new company buying the facility is to survive, they will probably be refining a lighter, sweeter crude, which has far less emissions than the heavy crude that HOVENSA was refining at the time, which could, and I would defer to the commissioner of DPNR, but I think it's within the realm of possibility that refining a lighter crude with less emissions, that it could be possible to reduce that $700 million. It's within the realm of possibility, I think. And also for a new company to also remain profitable, they would not be able to do so if they continue to run the facility using diesel. So it would also probably require them to move to propane or liquefied natural gas, again reducing the emissions. So as a physician and a former acting health commissioner, assistant health commissioner, the health of my community is very important to me. But I do think that there are, as we look to the future, with a different crude and a different fuel running the facility, that those health concerns would be very, very much diminished as we go forward. So those are my opening comments, and I'll wait for questions.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hubert Lorenzo Frederick. Your co-moderator. Tonight, we're going to provide an opportunity for everyone in this room to get up and ask a question or make a brief comment. We have to be sensitive with time. So if you're going to ask a question, we ask that it's 30 seconds or less. If you're going to make a comment, please limit it to 1 minute. We want to hear what you have to say, but please don't go on and on and on, all right? If you have a question to a specific panel member, please address that person, all right? Let's start.
Good evening. This is a question for Ms. Alicia Barnes. With the permit that HOVENSA currently has, is there anything that prevents them from running a refinery?
Okay, Ronald, can you repeat the question, please?
The question is, with the current environmental permit that HOVENSA has right now, is there anything that prevents them from running the refinery?
Short answer, no. There's nothing that prevents HOVENSA at this point in time, based on the fact that they are a permitted facility, from running the facility. However, based on the permit requirements, based on national ambient air quality standards, after you cease operations of a specific unit for a specified amount of time, there are certain start-up requirements, and you're familiar because you've worked in the refinery, and so have I, that you have to comply with before you can actually start up. It's similarly to if you have a vehicle and that vehicle has not been operating for a point in time. In order for you to put that vehicle back online, there's certain specific sort of tests or performance tests that you have to run before you can start up. So short answer, no, they are a permitted facility. That's what makes the facility attractive. Permitted to emit certain criteria pollutants, permitted to discharge certain wastewater based on their effluent limits. However, to begin to emit or discharge again, they're going to have to meet certain performance standards prior to recommencing operations.
This is Emmanuel. 30 seconds. So much to say. Mr. Samuel, I'd like to understand that you're saying that cars would emit more than that comparison stack you have that represents HOVENSA, number one. If so, you need to visit scorecard.org and look at TRIs from St. Croix, number one. And Ms. Barnes, tell me, in terms of the oil and HOVENSA's compound, how does this Fourth Amendment agreement affect that?
I would like to start.
Okay.
Okay, and quick answer on the vehicles. I don't have the criteria pollutant emissions from vehicles yet. I'm working on that, but the CO2 alone is actually from 20,000.
Vaccine and toluene and xylene and all those carcinogens.
From 20,000 vehicles, you would have more than this in carbon dioxide alone in terms of emissions. And that's because each vehicle it's got its own exhaust pipe. So you got 20,000 exhaust pipes collectively emitting.
Commissioner.
Okay, Cletus, I need to clarify what Mr. Shacroft said, but also I need you to ask me the second part of your question because I didn't quite understand it. But let me clarify first, and you can calm down when you're talking to me. Correct.
I am very calm, lady. I'm very calm. You don't want to see me upset. I'm calm.
Well, I'm just telling you, Cletus, that when you are
I am very calm.
when you are addressing me,
calm.
when you are addressing me, I'm just letting you know. We are a panel of volunteers, so when you are speaking to me, you're going to address me calmly. Now, in terms of let me clarify, the way the environmental regulations are, you have a stationary source, just like HOVENSA, and you have mobile sources like a vehicle. So really, to make a comparison of both, you really can't make a comparison because HOVENSA is a stationary source and vehicles are mobile sources. So when they're emitting, they're also, the emissions are dissipated in the environment. So it's a different comparison. So I just need to make that clarification. So they're permitted differently. So it's not really like comparing apples and apples. So we just have to be careful when we put the the information out there. In terms, what's the second part of your question, please?
In the 80s, we found out that HOVENSA, below the ground, there were oil that seeped from the tanks. HOVENSA has been cleaning this thing extremely slow throughout the decades. My question to you, how does that affect the cleaning of HOVENSA underneath the compounds that we say is not going into our groundwater? How does the Fourth Amendment Agreement handle or address that issue? Was that calm enough, young lady?
I'm going to say this to you, Cletus, because I know you very well and I respect your intellect. I respect you as a person. We've worked together in the office of Senator John Baptiste, and I think you're doing yourself a disservice by trying to act combative. And so in terms of the response, I can clearly answer the question. As it relates to the groundwater issue, the government of the Virgin Islands, in a previous administration, and we're moving forward with that, we filed a natural resource damages case against HOVENSA, and that case is ongoing. It's ongoing, and it's presently in litigation. And basically, when the amendment was being negotiated, one of the things that HOVENSA wanted to happen is for the environmental issues surrounding the NRD case to be settled or to become a part of that agreement. What we opted to do is keep it separate and apart because we did not want the issues relative to the environment to be diluted in this amendment, because it has nothing to do with the environmental infractions that HOVENSA has caused. And so that natural resource damages case is ongoing, it's in litigation, and the government of the Virgin Islands is moving forward with that case against HOVENSA, separate and apart from the agreement. So in a short answer, nothing in the agreement that has been negotiated with HOVENSA or its parties will impact any of the environmental infractions that HOVENSA is liable for. Nothing in the agreement releases HOVENSA from the environmental liability. Nothing in the agreement will make HOVENSA less responsible for the environmental infractions. The fact that they wanted to have the environmental issues included was for them to sort of dilute their liability issues, and we kept that separate and apart. So there's nothing in this agreement that is going to release HOVENSA from the environmental infractions. Nothing in this agreement prevents any person or groups of persons from bringing any sort of environmental claim against HOVENSA. The environmental regulations are clear. They're cradle to grave. If you cause an environmental issue, you are responsible for cleaning that up. Secondly, let me just answer, Cletus. The cleaning of the oil that has been spilled from tanks and various components at HOVENSA is administered by the Environmental Protection Agency under the RCRA program. RCRA stands for Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. That act is not delegated to states and territories for them to administer. So it is administered directly by the EPA. HOVENSA has a RCRA permit. They're doing groundwater remediation where they're removing petroleum from the groundwater based on their RCRA permit. And that is all managed by the EPA administered by the EPA. DPNR is involved because we issued the well drilling permit for them to do the remediation. But the RCRA program is a federal program that is managed and administered by the EPA. So I hope that clarifies the issue relative to the environmental liability concerns. As far as the groundwater, it's a known fact that there is contamination to the groundwater. Something to make very clear, the EPA has maintained that they are satisfied with HOVENSA's remediation programs. The government of the Virgin Islands feels that we are not satisfied. That is why we brought the natural resources damages claim against HOVENSA.
Blessed evening. First of all, I'm hearing a lot of encouragement for HOVENSA, but I will ask anyone in this room, when is the last time you've been, whether in the ocean or around the ocean, to see its color and its discoloration in terms of seems like it's thick? Secondly, in that Fourth Amendment agreement, what I'm surprised that I'm not seeing is that this is a piece of property that's over 2,000 acres and pay less of a property tax. When is it that we as a people in the Virgin Islands will see a decrease in our property that we've been carrying on our back for HOVENSA, which is $1 trillion company, to be paying that back to give us the lease? And that's my question to you, Commissioner.
No, let me just make a clarifying point here. HOVENSA does not want to be in the United States Virgin Islands. HOVENSA does not want to be on St. Croix. And we negotiated and agreed, and they wanted to leave the Virgin Islands on their terms. So we negotiated an agreement with them to leave on our terms. And that's what I think we need to make clear. Right? If HOVENSA had their way, they would have simply done what they did. They would have left and said to the government of the Virgin Islands, take us to court. What we negotiated was an exit strategy. You're going to leave, but you're going to leave on our terms. As the Commissioner of the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, I also deal with fish and wildlife issues. So I'm very well aware of the impact to our coastal waters, our marine environment, ambient air quality issues, very well aware. I don't mean to keep belaboring this point, but my father was a fisherman, so I am very well aware of the environmental issues, implications of a refinery. This is not someone that is not keenly aware of the environment of St. Croix. I lived my summers on Christmas Park Beach and down at the pool in Frederickstead. Everyone knows that. So in terms of being aware of what the environmental implications are, I am. But I think we need to understand that this agreement is an agreement where we're telling HOVENSA goodbye on our terms, and moving forward, we're trying to get someone that would be in agreement with the government of the Virgin Islands on our terms, considering the environmental implications.
Appreciate it. If you would please try to make the response a little bit more.
Yeah, but I need to be clear.
I understand, but we have a lot of questions to this, so let's try to make it a little more concise.
My name is Roach, and I wanted to ask Delegate Christensen a question concerning the health study. My grandbaby attended the Zion Christian Academy right across from HOVENSA, and a couple of times they had the mission, and she had to have been excused from school. Now, how can a study now help in the identification of possible health threats from HOVENSA when the missions are no longer being released? How can that work?
Well, to begin to answer you, requested that funding and that study before HOVENSA closed. It just, as everyone knows, the closing of HOVENSA, the announcement of the closure came as a surprise to most people in the territory. But we had requested that funding the year before. But I still think it is a benefit to know what impact, if any emissions or changes in the ambient air the Commission referred to might have had on the health of people living in that area. I think it's still a benefit to know that, and especially as we are now contemplating another refinery coming into that area, should the agreement be ratified. So we started that process of requesting those funds before HOVENSA closed, but I still think it's a benefit to us now to be able to look at what the impact has been, and I think it's important as we may end up having another refinery there in the future.
You know, I want to see a show of hands here. How many people here are for the agreement? Just raise your hand if you think you're for the agreement right now.
For my benefit, you know how this looks?
Let's get a count. I'm just really curious to see how many people in this room are for it. 12 people. Roughly 12. Now, how many people have read the agreement and are not in favor of the agreement? Okay. I don't want you to think that there's anything. That's right. Who all are against the agreement? Period. How many people here tonight feel that they can provide some insight to sway those people who are not sure? Insight. Give some insight. Okay, we have someone here. Okay, you want to listen? Okay, we have some undecided people in here, right? Right. Great. How many people, there are some people in here who are not sure, right? About which way they want to fall on this agreement, this fourth agreement. What can we provide to these people to sway them either which way?
Well, first of all, my name is Malone, and I look at impacts. First of all, I look at the environment, water, the land, the soil, our marine life, and human beings. And you look at those and, you say, well, our environment has been impacted with the water. You said you're going to give it a grade, A to F. Our water, A or F. Our land, A or F. Our aquifer, A or F. Our people, A or F. The environment, the air, A or F. And so that's the grade to give it. Now, granted, yes, it's about economics. We mentioned it before. We mentioned where there was sugar cane. And then there was a field to say, well, let's bring in Harvey. And the people did not decide that was done by Governor Hansen. But when it came to HOVENSA, yes, it came back to the people, to the lawmakers. But now, that's the industrial age now, so we're over that. We have human experience that can tell you what the experience with HOVENSA. I listened to a lady on the TV the other night said, she lives in Harvey, Princeton Hill area. And she said, she wakes up and she finds oil on her vehicle, oil on her roof, oil on her car, oil in her drum of water. And I don't believe the people in the East End get those same kind of impacts. When you talk about emission, again, and you're trying to compare tax emission to car emission. I live in the east of the refinery, and there's nights I call the refinery and say, listen, there's some odor, strong odor emitted into my home. They take the information, DPNR, I guess they don't do anything about it, but they have responsibility of enforcement and monitoring. So who do you call? You call OVENSA. So who monitors? Lorenzo.
That was his.
Lorenzo, you can ask them how many people in here believe that are against the agreement, and how many people here are just against having a refinery on the island, period. There's a difference between that. How many people are against the agreement? And how many people are against having a refinery on the island?
My name is I live west of the refinery, and I have a simple question that I have to answer for me. Up here on the panel, how many of you live in the west of the refinery?
We've got one person on the panel who lives west of the refinery.
You know, that's democracy.
Excuse me. My turn. Thank you.
47 minutes, right?
Please, people, we're not going to be here all night. And so if we're going to have a productive, constructive town meeting, we have to have some order.
Get a timekeeper.
Okay, some order, please.
Get a timekeeper.
We can get out of it. I agree with you. So, no, excuse me, I'm the organizer of the town hall suite, sir. Respect that. Okay? That's not the point. It's 8:30, so we only got one question. Please.
Excuse me. I have a question, but I also want to make a statement. And I don't think I should be moving this item forward. This is a town hall meeting. We the people are here. The majority of us are here, know why we're here. And you need to give us a chance to speak our heart and how we feel about this project. Because a lot of us here are intelligent human beings. We know dumb people along the road. Them days are done. I have a question to the volunteer president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, sir.
And then I have a statement after you answer my question. You stated here tonight that a vote down is a vote against the business community of this island. I want you to clarify what that means, because I'm a businessman in this community.
Sure. HOVENSA people drank in our bars, ate in our restaurants, went to our hospital, went to our churches, they shopped in our stores, they bought houses, they leased houses, they leased cars and trucks, they bought cars and trucks. You know, since HOVENSA has closed, the vast majority of businesses on this island are really hurting. So, you know, we've polled our members. We've got about 435 signatures right now on a petition. People that are supportive of this agreement. And I just want to say, I respect people saying you don't want a refinery. I respect that. If you don't want a refinery, that's what this agreement's about. This agreement's about whether we want a refinery or not. And that's what this is about.
Time.
And that's the issue.
Thanks. Now I would like to respond to you. What we need to do here, and I'm speaking to my people right now, we need to start coming together, and we need to make a decision of the economic future of the Virgin Islands. We have enough human resources here, and let us resurrect ourselves. It is time for us to go out with the old and to come in with the new. If you want to be dead with Hess, you go get buried with Hess. If you want to live with us, you go come with us and work together. If the governor of the Virgin Islands have come to the people like this and asked,
how can we negotiate with him? Not he alone and his chosen few, but we the people. Mr. Henry, you chose how you taking all these jobs. You show us how you want to help our economy, because we for 46, 7 years have allowed your shareholders to make billions of dollars here. And our delegate in Washington, D.C., we want the people from Washington to come here to tell us we want our excise tax. If you will give Israel billions of dollars every year, we want what justly ours. Thank you.
I will move on to the next round of questions, and then we'll take a question from you. In the interest of time, okay, we really have to move it forward. We're going to get to people. Just when we're doing the questioning, kind of just indicate, keep your question in your mind, or we need to move forward, okay, with the question. All right. Yeah, let's ask the next question, and then we'll come to it. No, we're moving to the next question. We have another question for the panel. Okay, we're coming back to you guys. All right, this one again is for the panel. HOVENSA has been the center of much controversy around the previous concession agreement. How do you propose going about instituting concessions to a new buyer or operator if a buyer is identified? And if so, are you in favor of extending the current concessions to any new possible buyer?
Again, two things. Whether we like it or not, the United States of America, which we're a part of, is a republic. And it is a representative form of government. It is not government by referendum. It is government by you elect people to represent you. That's why the election process is so critical and so important. If every time our elected officials, be it the governor or a senator, has to have a referendum to make a decision, that is not leadership. And we elect our leaders to lead. It is a Republican form of government, and Carl Christopher, you know that. Okay?
All right. Time. Got another question in the back.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I think we need to continue debating the issue and not getting personal in any way or fellas getting fluffed. It's not really worth it. But I wanted to comment to the Chamber of Commerce. The first statement is the decision is whether or not you want an agreement. The decision is whether or not this agreement is in the best interest of the people of the Virgin Islands. And to clarify that, in the agreement, it clearly states that there's going to be a forbearance of collection of import duties. They're going to remain with their submerged land contracts. There's going to be a deferment of $7 million in property tax, while at the same time, we're dealing with a breach of contract. No way in this agreement does it clearly identify that for breaching 9 years of your contract, the penalty is going to be X. Now I say this while at the same time, PDVSA, which is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, subsidized a gallon of gasoline in Venezuela below 20 cents per gallon for 30.4 million people. Why is it that we could not somehow in this agreement try to make sure that gas in the Virgin Islands is subsidized oil to WAPA and the people of the Virgin Islands, which is only 110,000 versus 30.4 million? And when I looked at the cost of what PDVSA is doing in Venezuela, they said it was averaging over $3.4 billion a year to subsidize the fuel.
So just to be sure I understand, you support a new refinery, but you don't support this agreement?
You don't have to worry what I support. I'm actually a direct question about why is it that there's not really an agreement for Virgin Islanders, but giving HOVENSA additional concession when they have reached the contract. That's what I'm asking.
And the answer is frankly that this entire, and I know this is going to be an unpopular thing to say, this entire agreement is a give from HOVENSA. They don't have to do anything. They could file bankruptcy. Here's Anthony. They could file bankruptcy tomorrow. They could. I'm just telling you what they can do.
Who's the first person they have to be?
No, actually, if they file bankruptcy, the first people they have to pay are their secured creditors, and those are creditors that have collateral for their debts.
Right.
Okay.
Pretty complex. All right, let's get the next question.
Good night, everybody. Hi. I think that we're mixing apples with oranges, with breadfruit in this discussion. This panel isn't the decision makers.
Thank you.
The decision makers are the senators who are not present here. So don't get angry at the panel for their personal position, because you have your position, I have my position. The people that you need to be speaking to, whether you're for or against the amendment, is the 7 senators from St. Croix and the 1 from St. John, and you need to express their concern. When HOVENSA indicated that they were going to be closed, I said you need to elect people from St. Croix that will tell the governor what we need in the agreement. You don't wait until the agreement comes down to act like you're so confused like Senator Barshinger. That he has no idea what's going on, and the other senators, they have no clue. I've been out of the loop for a minute because of personal issues, and I know more than the 7 that's been here working. And they need to draw backbone and stand up and defend the people of St. Croix. If they don't like the agreement, vote it down. It's simple. You don't need to argue with anybody here. And if you're for the agreement, the fact of the matter is HOVENSA has decided to leave. They closed for all intents and purposes. What the governor has said he's done is that he has decided where they're going to pay. I don't agree with everything in the 4th Amendment. I've made that perfectly clear. If there's something that we need in it, then we need to lobby our senators and tell them this is what we need. And then if we have to go to court, then we go to court. Simple. End of story. Not arguing with them. They're not the decision.
I have a question. Good night. I have a question to the panel. The contract with HOVENSA and the government was breached. If you breach a contract, that means it's like a marriage when you divorce a woman. Everything is null and void. Your benefits that you're getting, gone. Because you breach the contract. Everything that you have, that we have given you, you have broken the contract. Okay? So, I can understand how you could still have a permit to operate and open tomorrow. You breach the contract. You have broken all relations with the person that you have breached the contract with.
But it's over. That's a good analogy when you get married and you get a divorce. Well, you use an example. You had an agreement. You had a contract.
The contract, and that means all relationship that you and I have and the benefit that I have given you as a result of that relationship is broken.
Yeah, but you don't get to put the other person out of the house. You have to go to a judge and you have to go through motions to go through that. It's the same thing. I think I let you speak, sir. I let you speak, sir. I let you speak, sir. When you look at this agreement, I think we have to be looking at it in context. There are people here who don't want a refinery. We're here to talk about an agreement that we have before the Senate and to give you information that we have about the economics and everything that goes along with this scenario. When HOVENSA approached the government at the closure, HOVENSA was not in the mood or wasn't in the mindset to sell the refinery. The big problem comes now you have a 2,000-acre deep water port that is without any economic activity. There's an opportunity cost to that. Every day that refinery sits closed, that's $500,000 worth of activity for the Virgin Islands, specifically for St. Croix. And that's just doing it on $160 million, what they say they put into the economy directly. So every year that we sit that refinery down, conservatively, is $160 million it costs us. Not $7 million in taxes. Conservatively. He's talking about the economic impact of over $600 million of economic activity in our economy. So it behooves us to start to make our assets work for us, not lock them down. When the government moved to make an agreement with HOVENSA, it's to unlock 2,000 acres, a deep water port, and 40 years of investment by we the people of the Virgin Islands and HOVENSA. What is the alternative? To keep it shut down forever? Or to 10 years? Or for 15 years? Even if it doesn't come back, even if the seller does not operate it to the full capacity, at least we will have the return of our asset and the return of the economic activity in St. Croix. There is no one in this room, that has a viable answer for St. Croix, the people who live here, the people who feed their families and send the children to school here, to do something for the economy, besides creating employment with their assets.
Right. Listen, I just wanted to make sure everyone knows this. We invited all the senators to appear tonight, and as you see, not one of them came. Right? We got a question back there.
Good evening. I'm Gustav. I have two questions actually. But the first question is, this agreement has 2 dates, and it is spoken of as a 1-year agreement, but then it's read as a 6-year agreement. According to my reading of this agreement, you have a 1-year sales process period. If the refinery is not sold within that sales process period, the refinery gets to continue to operate as an oil storage terminal for an additional 5 years. Now, I don't understand why we're talking as if we're selling the refinery, but we have a 6-year period while the refinery can simply sit there doing exactly what we're saying we don't want to happen.
Okay, Jim. What? Gustav? A couple of points of clarification, if I may be allowed. Extra time, please, if I may, Mr. Moderator. Okay, the first thing is that, Greg, you are correct. HOVENSA did reach an agreement, and that is the government of the Virgin Islands posture, that the agreement was in fact breached. Their response to our stating that they breached an agreement was that, no, we didn't breach an agreement. So let's go to court to interpret if this was breached or not. And that's the matter of litigation. As it relates to the permits, the way the environmental law is written, once someone possesses an environmental permit, unless they specifically violate the terms of that permit, whether local or federal, the permit cannot be revoked. That is environmental law, both local and federal. So that's to your response, your question relative to the permits. As it relates to your question, Jim, or Gustav, relative to the 5-year and the 1 year. When HOVENSA stated that they wanted to operate as a terminal facility, and when the government of the Virgin Islands was faced with the challenge of whether we're going to have gasoline, continued gasoline on the island of St. Croix, continued fuel for WAPA, there was an interim agreement that allowed for HOVENSA to be able to operate as a terminal facility. In order for HOVENSA to be able to operate as a terminal facility and receive fuel for storage from whomever they were in agreement with, the industry standard for those agreements is a 5-year agreement. So that is where the 5 years come in terms of the storage and the operation of the terminal facility. So while there may seem to be some contradiction in terms of the terms, The 5-year is specific to the oil terminal facility because based on industry standards, which you're well aware of, Gustav, that in order to have, to enter into agreements with fuel suppliers, it's a minimum of 5 years. So that's where the 5 years come in. But I can't go
right,
through.
but I understand the 5 years for HOVENSA. Right. What I'm saying is that it appears that we, the Virgin Islands, are agreeing in this agreement to allow HOVENSA to not sell the refinery and to stay as they are for a total of 6 years from now. And that's what I think this agreement does.
Well, I think that
the refinery is not sold. HOVENSA can simply continue as they are today for 6 years. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I believe that you may, and I know you're brilliant, but I think that you may be, I don't believe that is correct, the correct interpretation, but I can sit with you and we can discuss it further. Okay? Okay.
All right, we have another question over here.
Commissioner Martin, you indicated that HOVENSA would still be responsible for all of its responsibilities as far as the environment is concerned at the end of this agreement, once the agreement is executed. But could you explain Section 5, termination and discharge upon sale? I have the right thing here.
Okay, what does it say, Mr. Myron?
Upon completion of any arm's length sale of the oil refinery and related facilities, the rights and obligations of HOVENSA, HOVIC, and PDVSA 6, under the concession agreement shall be terminated, and each of said parties released and discharged of such rights and obligations thereunder, except as otherwise required by law.
And that is it, except as otherwise required by law, because environmental, and remember I stated, Mr. Emmanuel, that nothing in this agreement spoke to the environmental issues, because they are regulated separate and apart from this agreement. And HOVENSA wanted us to include environmental issues in this agreement, and the government of the Virgin Islands absolutely refused, and by law we couldn't, because the environmental laws are separate and apart. The environmental permits, local, federal, are separate and apart. In the environmental arena, we say cradle to grave. Environmental liability issues are non-transferable. That's why at the Red Mud site, when we filed the natural resource damages claim, we went after Martin Marietta, Alcoa, Vialco, everyone that even did whatever they did at that site was named in that natural resource damages claim. You cannot transfer environmental liability. So that is why we say separate and apart, and that's why we did not include any of the environmental issues in this in this release. And what we need to understand is this is a goodbye letter. Goodbye, HOVENSA. You don't want to be here, you're leaving, but you're going to leave on our terms. That's basically it. It's goodbye, and we should be looking forward in terms of what we want for the future. Mr. Christopher is right. What do we want to define as an economic portfolio for the United States Virgin Islands, specifically for St. Croix? This is our opportunity to do so. So this is looking forward. We're done with HOVENSA, but you're going to leave on our terms, not on your terms. On their terms, it was just we're going to operate an oil refinery and keep all the concessions. And we were like, absolutely not. So the environmental issues are not affected. There should be no doubt in anyone's mind. HOVENSA, HOVIC, PDVSA, VI, PDVSA, Petrovelas in Venezuela, Hess, Amarada remain liable for any and every environmental infraction as a result of their operation and consumption.
Thank you.
I think, wait, believe you, sir.
I think that what's bothering a lot of people here, if I may, is that we always seem to appear weak in these negotiations. So, what do you interpret in this agreement as the government dealing from a position of strength, or putting some kind of a penalty on HOVENSA if the interpretation is that it's a breach of contract? Because we saying it, but we're not sensing that it's acting like it. So, could you really identify something that would at least make us feel better that you are dealing from a position of strength and not just being weak and just saying, okay, Biden, you want to go?
I think, Buli, thank you for your question. I think that the fact that we have an agreement is a major accomplishment, because HOVENSA did not even want to agree to sell. What HOVENSA, even though they did not articulate that this is what they wanted to do, what to me it seemed like they wanted to do, because they did not surrender any of their permits, federal or local. From the day this happened, we were in contact with the Environmental Protection Agency. They refused to relinquish their federal permits and their local permits. So it seemed, based on that action, that what they wanted to do is hold on to their permits, let the facility just sit there, and whenever market conditions change, start up whenever. Even though they said that that's not what they wanted to do, their posture gave that appearance. The fact that we were able to get them to agree to a bona fide sale is a major accomplishment.
I think that when you look at it too, if you were there when they came in to speak to Government House and they were across the table from us, they weren't negotiating. They were telling us what they were going to do. And one year later, we came up with a deal where not only were we getting the refinery sold, which was what they were totally opposed to, we were getting 20% of the deal, and we only had a year to sell the refinery. So I think the government is in a position of great strength. When you look back at what the government was, the position we were in a year and a half ago, in January, when they said they were going to close. Not only do we have it lined up now where we have other fuel sources where WAPA is fed, and we know how we're going to fuel our government cars as well as private vehicles, we now have the position of strength because we have had time to do the things that are backfill us and make us strong against a closure. And when you look forward, and Alicia was talking about the future, what you need to do now is talk about how are we going to connect our next opportunity by dealing with the energy problem and looking at our broadband and all the other things that we have going for us on this island, our tourism product that's going to put us in an even stronger position. I mean, years ago, all of us snubbed our noses at everything else because the pockets were fat from the HOVENSA oil. Now we have a chance again to really prepare ourselves, because when this goes through, we have a real opportunity now to make St. Croix a diversified economy that could stand on its own feet.
If I may, and just in terms of the environment, they needed to do some of the things that they wanted to do as well. They needed to modify some of their local and federal environmental permits, and we held that as leverage, and we also used that as a bargaining chip to be able to get them to the table to agree to a bona fide sale. And Commissioner Bryan is correct, because we were both present at the first meeting with HOVENSA, Mr. Orenstein et al., and it was extremely draining and very, very emotionally taxing to sit across from such toxicity. It was really tough. It was really tough.
All right, we have a question here. Your name, sir?
My name is Delroy Miller. And I'm sitting here, I'm really eating. I left my house, come up here, and prepare this nonsense. This thing is all about money. And we got a lot of old people who are defending this. And I'm saying, I live in Strawberry. And I came to the point that I don't care how much money HOVENSA made. But once they started to mess with my clean air, on my water, they became my enemy. I lost my older sister from cancer. She was living in 2010. And I'm saying, hey, you know, I never heard anything from HOVENSA. They never came to find out, well, what's wrong with her. I see her in bed, sick, and I can't do anything for her. This thing is all about money. And I'm saying, I'm going to ask the panel up there, do you think that any oil refinery and the people here in St.Croix can coexist? That's my question to you. Give me an answer.
Alright, I'll be bold. This is Frank Gerard speaking, okay? This is not, and I want to make it really clear, this is not the Hotel and Tourism Association, because I didn't know this was the format. I don't know about anybody on this panel, but I remember St. Croix before HOVENSA. And I don't know how many people in this room remember St. Croix before HOVENSA. Okay? And the reality is, the operation of the refinery has closed, and we're still not talking about where we want St. Croix to be. The other reality is the finances of the Virgin Islands, and this is really critical, are being adversely impacted because of the loss of the largest piece of our economy, the refinery. But when you drive down Queen Mary Highway, you would think that we were a fifth world island compared to St. Thomas. Our roads aren't even maintained. So the disparity between the income generated on St. Croix, the disparity between the tax income generated on St. Croix and the use of that income to support the long-term debt of the Virgin Islands, right? So St. Croix, we need to get what's rightfully ours. That's my bottom line.
We have a question in the back.
Good evening. My name is Marvin Pickering. First of all, I want to thank you for putting on this town hall meeting and getting people to come out and participate in the discussion. I'm a businessman. Most of you that know me realize I was the senior vice president of the CFO for Cruiser on over 30 years. I want to see economic activity in St. Croix. I want to see economic activity in the Virgin Islands. Whether it is from a refinery or, as Nereida said earlier, that we need to develop our own economy. However, I have a question. The government has been talking about breach of contract, and part of the third concession agreement says that HOVENSA was supposed to supply oil to WAPA. Now, the question is, if the senators approve this agreement, right, would that be a tacit approval of the breach of the third concession agreement? Perhaps my good friend Mark, I can answer the question since the attorney.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pickering. Could you restate your question, please? Is it an admission? Is it an admission
of breach?
Of breach.
Right. Because
for HOVENSA to sign the contract.
No, for the legislature to approve the agreement. I mean, can they go to court after you've approved the agreement, agreeing to the breach, because they're no longer supplying WAPA with fuel at a discounted price? Now you're proving that breach.
This is an amendment. I work for the government, but this is an amendment this is the fourth amendment to the original concession agreement. And I think it says very clearly in there that neither party makes any admissions in connection with the original, the big agreement. This is a 4-page document. It's 4 pages. No, I'm scared to give you a legal opinion, but no, I don't think it does constitute some sort of admission.
Real quick, the delegate, was there a comment you had to make, ma'am?
No, I had not. I was unable to hear the question from the gentleman in the front, and I think his name is Delroy. I didn't hear his question.
He wants to know if a refinery can coexist in St. Croix with the people of St. Croix.
Oh, I want to believe that it's possible. I, like many other people, would prefer that we find some other use for the property, but with the state of our economy in St. Croix, the condition of our government finances, I think we need to take advantage of what can give us the most economic boost in the shortest period of time. And if I did not think that a refinery could coexist with the people of St. Croix in a positive way, I would say so, but I believe that it is possible under certain circumstances. I believe it's possible, for example, as I said earlier, if the type of fuel that is refined is of a different nature that does not have the same level of harmful emissions. I believe that if the fuel used to run the refinery is not diesel, again with the same level of emissions, such as using propane or natural gas, that yes, the harmful emissions would be much, much reduced. But I do feel that the state of St. Croix right now wants to do something that can bring us some major economic activity as soon as possible. And that will allow us the opportunity to get and begin to do what Carl said, to be able to plan from there. And there are many, many other things that are happening, as Commissioner Bryan said. We have the broadband, we have the technology park, we'll have our National Heritage Area for St. Croix, and a lot of other things are happening. But if we don't have the economic stimulus that we need in the earliest possible date, would not have the wherewithal to plan and determine where St. Croix is going to go from here. I do believe it's possible, but it would have to be structured in such a way that we do it in a way that protects the health of the people and the environment in a much better way than was done with the HOVENSA plant.
I'd like to follow up on the delegates' comments, and that is, I think we need to consider where we are today as a result of a decision that was made in 1965. And we're very unhappy with certain environmental conditions as a result of that decision. But we're today in 2013, and we need to figure out how we're moving forward. One way, if we don't ratify this agreement or this amendment, and we move forward into an in-limbo situation that might be tied up for many, many years, decades, in whether it's bankruptcy court or other court litigation. We look at red mud pile. The red mud pile, that activity stopped 13 years ago. It stopped in 2000. What's the condition of the red mud pile today? It's still there. We are taking action. The VI government is taking action right now against all the list of people that have been involved in that. But the reality is it's still there, and it's sitting there, and it's doing nobody any good. And we're suffering as a result of the fact that that's still there. Just now multiply that by an enormous amount when you look at HOVENSA rusting into the future as we're in limbo. It's holding up, preventing us from bringing in new industry or new development on the South Shore. And so let's be careful what we're wishing for, because we're wishing for, if we got it, if we don't allow them to move forward, then we're going to be in a condition of limbo over decades while we're deciding, and it's going to hold us back both in environmental conservation as well as in economic development. The other point I'll make is the one that the delegate just made, is with allowing them to move forward, to sell the refinery, to put it into operation under the condition of today's or tomorrow's environmental protection law, which is much more restrictive than it was 10, 20, 15 years ago, then we've got an opportunity to move into cleaner fuels. In fact, HOVENSA already had done that. They'd already moved over from burning fuel oil in order to operate their energy generation units to propane. When WAPA did the same thing last week, signing an agreement to move from fuel oil number 2 and number 6 into propane, you know what they did with SO2? Their sulfur dioxide emissions levels are going down by 95%. Sulfur dioxide is a critical, it impacts us from a health standpoint. It's asthma. It's a big problem. So by moving forward and allowing us to move forward using new technology and new energy generation, we can get a cleaner environment that, yes, we can live with the refinery, given our trade winds, given our situation, our conditions here, with new technologies and new environmental law. We're in a much better position moving forward than staying still. So the no action alternative, which is what we're asking for here, is not the best alternative in our estimation.
Folks, it's right after 9. It's right after 9 p.m. and we're trying to get as many people as we can. So try to make your comments a little briefer, to the point. Think about your questions before you ask. I'll make sure I go through all the people who have not asked a question first, and then I'll go to those who asked a question before.
Abdulali, I just want to come straight to the point. I think the senators should not vote in favor of the agreement. If they do not vote, this would allow for the concession agreement to continue. It would also allow for HOVENSA to operate the oil refinery, the oil storage. I say all this because HOVENSA's change of focus in terms of operating as an oil refinery is a signal that oil does not pay, at least not here on St. Croix. Secondly, there's been enough concerns about the environment and people getting ill to conclude that there are problems, and enough problems here to say no to an old oil refinery. Now, the legislature said if they say no, it doesn't mean that HOVENSA's obligations will disappear. They certainly have to meet those. Looking ahead, we the people of the Virgin Islands need to map out our future and look for other ways of developing the economy. We the people need to take control of our own destiny now. Now, there's been some reference to HOVENSA leaving on our terms. We have few terms, to be honest. I really wish we had some good financial terms. We have had 40 years of HOVENSA. It's time for us to move on, do the right thing, and not sign that agreement.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kenneth Gittens, and I want everybody in this room to be aware. Where is your representative? Right. That's the first thing, because let me explain something to you. My mother is the oldest breast cancer survivor here in St. Croix. And I remember in 1972, HOVENSA has had an explosion. And it rained that day and we had to walk home. And by the time we reached from Claro Marco to Hannah's Rescana, all our clothes were black. White shirt turned black, khaki pants turned black. Up to this day, not one agency come and clean a house room, clean a cistern. Okay, and I talk in 1972, so now, say you all wanted to convince me to keep this oil refinery, and our leadership wanted to convince me that. Where is the benefits for us? You know, so this whole plan that they have here, we're not included. You know, you're talking about money. That money can't sell. The money we're going to make, we're going to have to spend to stay alive. Okay? That money got to fly way out to go to America, where our professional cancer clinic and stuff that we should have one have the biggest oil refinery in the Western Hemisphere. Where is it? You know, where's the benefits? Where's the excise tax delegate to Congress, that we're supposed to be getting back. That we could live like the people in Kuwait. How the people everywhere else that have their own oil factories, how they live with the Texas tycoon. People in Kuwait and Israel and all these places. How come we got to be the papa and can't get nothing? That's my question. So, really and truly, we need to hold our so-called elected officials starting from the top. Governor, lieutenant governor, delegate to Congress, and all the senators are accountable for not representing us and giving us nothing.
We got a question back here.
Yes, good evening. My name is Boy. I'm here standing listening to you all speak about the has already gone, number one. We need to stop fraud the people and tell them about getting an oil refinery. This contract is not about an oil refinery. It is about Hess going out to look at buyer. People here talking about the oil refinery don't come back. Let's be real. Ain't coming back. We giving Hess everything. As people just say, what about us who live in the budget? People talk about jobs. Jobs to who? Most of the people who work at Hess have already gone. They ain't coming back here. And I'm telling you, it's sad to see that we catching a brain again, where all elected officials is selling the country out. Have a good night.
Okay, I promised Janelle I was going to let her ask a question. Got one more.
Good night. My name is Cornell. Inside here we have two sets of people, for and against. Against the man who lives up in East is not affected as the man who lives in Harvey. And two of you are going to have two different views. The man who is in Harvey is like, I need to pay a doctor bill. The man who lives up in East, he needs to get his pocket money. He needs to pay his mortgage. But the man who lives in Harvey is not even so worried about paying his mortgage. He's about trying to stay alive. I live over in the north side, morning star. And one morning, my wife woke me up. She said, I smell gas. She said, go and see if the stove is on. I went, I got up. This is about like 4:30, she waked me up. Go and I checked, the gas stove is not on. I went outside in the yard to check, see the bottle fell down, and the thing was broken. It wasn't broken. In the day, there was quarrel about a release. And Hess said they didn't release anything. I know I wasn't crazy. I know I wasn't dreaming because I was awoken to go and check to see what I was smelling. You know something? If it was something to kill the island, I would have been dead. My health matters more to me. I have not worked in Hess. So if you say I gain from Hess, I may gain a little. But the roads that are here, where is the Hess that was making so much money that our roads were so bad? I drive into a pothole. My car got flat. I went to the store and checked this tire. I said, I changed this tire. It's not good. Today you see, the people who was making the big money, now you're screaming because your pocket is getting low. But the people who was not making the money is screaming and saying because we are losing our health. Where are the people who was checking to see the air quality? Today we don't have none. Today now we're trying to put it into place. But I could have been a dead man based on what had happened. I say my health means more to me than anyone.
I assume you're against the ratification.
Commissioner Bryan, you are a member of the negotiation team?
No.
No? You were? Commissioner? Okay. My biggest question, I don't know if this question has been answered by our senators or asked by our senators, but was there a property tax assessment done so that the people of the Virgin Islands know what the true value of what the 2,000 acres is worth? And if so, how much would have to be really paid if they were issued on property tax bills, such as the one every one of us will get if you own property? And if so, I mean, what's the difference between the $7 million that they're going to give and what they may actually owe the government? There is a breach. Everybody can, well, most Prujans don't feel that there is a breach of contract. Most Prujans think that there should be a penalty attached for breaching the contract. Right. And I think that what we need to do collectively as a people, if you have an issue and you think these senators don't understand, which clearly by your response here, and I've been out of the loop for a minute, then you need to call their offices and we need to let them know what we expect. The fact that they're not present here says volume, and we need to hold them accountable. I applaud the two commissioners on the governor's team for coming here, because we could be rough, and we are rough, and we're going to tell you how we feel. But the fact that you're representing the executive branch and the legislators who the deal is in front of, they're done. We don't need them. They don't negotiate. Who we need is the legislators to come and tell us how we voted, how they thinking. And the fact that they're not here for us to tell them how we feel speaks volume. And I agree with what Mr. Viollet said. Where is the penalty that's attached for violating the agreement? Because there was a clear violation in the agreement. And if we need to take them to court separate and apart from this amendment, so be it. But they need to pay. When a man leaves a woman for cheating, we don't want money and alimony.
Alright, this is going to be our last question for the evening. Unless y'all want to stay here all night.
I'm not for the refinery, not because the business, because I feel that the Virgin Islands people really never get the benefit of these flows of good economic things that come to the island. Now, based on what I see from reading from the sources and things like that, the delegate will tell you when we had that meeting with Judi Buckley from EPA, we were promised to have the cancer registry. Where's the status of that? We were also promised the community health assessment. I know they're working on it, but it's been 2 years now since that has happened. Also, too, the commissioner may be a very vigilant person, but I know back in years ago, HOVENSA has been releasing fugitive gases for years and was self-regulating itself, and nobody was checking that. And there's no guarantee that any refinery comes back here that is going to be vigilant and people overseeing and make sure things are done. It really depends on who's in the house. And so there's no guarantee that I guess because people in these communities are suffering. And how much children they pay for all these private schools, hundreds of thousands of dollars. How many children in Harvey or children have gotten scholarships to go to private school?
Is that a question for me?
Both of you guys can respond. Go ahead, Delegate, and then we'll go to the
But I agree that the health assessment has been very, very much delayed. If the other part of the question was of the cancer registry, then Interior has given the Department of Health and the Office of the Governor a substantial amount of funds to be able to put together that cancer registry. I can't speak for them as to where it is, at what point in the development of that cancer registry they are, but they do have the funding for it.
If I may, just to add to what the delegate said, two things. What's pending right now before the EPA, because we submitted the proposal, the funding is in place, but they have to approve it. It's for the Pediatric Environmental Health Specialty Unit that we've already developed with the Department of Health. We're just waiting for the EPA approval with the Supplemental Environmental Project Funds, as well as the Cancer Registry. So those two are pending. We put the proposal to the EPA. I spoke to Judi Buckley. It's being reviewed, so it is pending. Thank you.
And in addition to that, we also brought down a pediatric environmental specialist to our hospital to meet and speak and help to provide some degree of training awakening to our health providers in St. Croix. We did that about a year ago.
I've got two people pleading to ask questions. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Brian, that guy next to you, I want to know, he told me that he said that he representing the Chamber of Commerce. Did he say that?
Yes. Yes.
And are you a lawyer?
Yes.
For HOVENSA? For who?
I'm a private practice lawyer. I don't represent, I've never represented HOVENSA.
And one more question to the commissioner. I'm asking, what happened to those 7 boards that fell out the side over there by HOVENSA? We never got a report.
Yeah, we sent that to the toxicology center, and we got that report. The report is in the Division of Fish and Wildlife.
How come we hear?
We released that, and during my confirmation hearing, I also gave the findings of it, sir. Mr. Miller, if you want a copy of it from my office, you can call me on Monday, because tomorrow is my birthday. I will not be in the office.
Yeah, good night. I have a question. My name is Brother Aaron. I have one question. How is it, and this is to the delegates of Congress, how is it now that all of a sudden, while the oil refinery is idle, you want to now come up with a cancer registry? How are you going to trace the particulates in the air that have been causing the very cancer that have been killing the people when the oil refinery is closed? Why now? Why didn't you do it 8 years ago or 10 years ago?
I can really go back if you would like me to perhaps 1999, 2000, when we brought the Department of Environmental Health specialists from the Centers for Disease Control to meet in Clifton Hill, Prophet and Harvey to set up screening to try to get the health data. We brought them back again. Several years later, we brought back an environmental commission to also follow up on that. So we have had efforts ongoing over the years. We did have a cancer registry back when I left the Department of Health. And I would be at a loss to be able to explain what happened to it. So we are starting all over again. And as I said before, and this is one of a long string of activities that I have been involved in as your delegate to Congress, particularly in the areas surrounding the refinery and the aluminum processing plant, that have tried to address the complaints, the concerns, and the health issues in that community, both with local and federal agencies. But the health assessment that's being done now was begun while HOVENSA was still operating. When the emissions, when we had a rash of harmful emissions into the communities surrounding over a period of a couple of years, and it happened that HOVENSA closed, but the study was requested and the funding was approved prior to HOVENSA closing. But I do agree with Mr. Peterson, it has been very slow process in getting it done. There have been a few obstacles in getting records, still protecting the privacy of individuals whose records we might need to review, and those have been some of the holdups. But over all of my time in Congress, we have been addressing these issues.
All right, we have the very, very last question. Please, if you can, just listen up. Please be quiet, just so this young lady can ask her question. Respect her. Great.
My name is Anuma Kanina, and I was originally asked by one of my friends to come up here and speak because she noticed that there is no youth really speaking. And this is going to affect us more than it's going to affect you, and that's personally. When we're talking about a decision this big, me and my brother were sitting in the back for a good bit of this discussion, and there was so much disrespect going on by us speaking over other people trying to speak, us talking to each other when other people are trying to speak. We can't expect to get a position or hand in motion if we won't listen. I've been to so many of these meetings my entire life. Many of you in this room have seen me there with my mother or my sister. And it's the same amount of talking. I give it up for them to put themselves in opposition and take up all of this energy. Because as soon as I walked into the door, that's all I'm feeling is negativity. It's not, we're going to move forward, or we're going to get better, or we're going to live it up. It's not of that. It's, I want to get my anger out now. I want them to hear it. It's not about the youth of the future. It's about us right now not having. But when many of us were getting money and getting paid from when HOVENSA was here, you didn't hear much people opening their mouths. Many of my friends are for HOVENSA reopening. But I personally believe that when you put $1 over your health, which I believe is priceless, you lose your spiritual being as a person. And many people are not going to understand that. And despite what decision is made, I honestly hope that the people in this room and those that are listening or watching are honestly going to remember the youth that are going to come after this. Because I want a Virgin Islands, I want a St. Croix where my future children can be born and be proud to say that they are Virgin Islanders, whether they were born on St. Croix, not be able to say, well, our ancestors sold us out for $1 bill. My name is Judi Buckley Sammuel Sanes, and I hope they don't have this message.
I want to second that, Anuma. And in closing, I just want to say that this discussion here tonight was quite enlightening. But my personal thing is that we need to come to a common vision. Now, when we are at that point in time when we recognize that we are in a position of stagnation, we need to create a new model, a new common vision for the Virgin Islands. One that is inclusive of, everybody coming and contributing to that vision. Okay? And with that said, good night, everybody. Let's move forward.